you know, little salt grasses. Also, the critters living in here, making their burrows and feeding traces, are going to be different here than in the offshore world, right?
You see multiple colors too. So you have that dark gray,
yes,
and you have this band, lighter.
And you're also seeing, yeah, so we are seeing some sort of layering in here, right? As you notice that down below, you see a little bit of darker stuff, that gray. I'm not sure it's kind of going along, but it might be some sort of chemical. So anyway, the seawater, but anyway, but yeah, but you definitely have a different color brown, and then you move up to at least a lighter color brown, and then maybe another different color brown up there. So you're getting some layering in here. So it's telling you that you are getting different environments, a different energy in the system, or different sediment supply of some sort. Something is changing. We don't know exactly what. Something is changing. So this is here, and so when we look at, okay, let me stop this on page 41. We'll stop to where it is now. So the bottom one, it's the shoreline, used to be way back there, then it moved out, and then it's moving back again. Right? But you can also see here on stop 2 going on through here. But it still is, this is the back barrier world. But then also what's interesting today that we see is what we had a drive through there, and actually along the beach you saw other little mud areas, right? And those are actually exposed layers on the beach itself that is outside of this world, is outside of these rectilinear features. So I don't know exactly what those are, but those could be in place. Because as this shoreline is moving up, what's it doing? It is programming, regressing. It is, the shoreline is moving backwards, and it's taking the high energy sand environment of the beach and putting it over this back barrier world. So underneath here somewhere is some of this stuff in the natural process of things that actually might be exposed on the beach today, which this is one of the first times I've seen it in a number of years. That's the source of your mud balls. That's a real local source. That's going to rip it up when the surf comes through, rip it up, moving on down the beach. Right? The other thing I know that is probably that's the case is because as we go back, what you'll see when you look along the man-made dunes, those piles of sand, you will actually see sand, little scarps on the bottom, right, where sand has collapsed in there. That's because the surf, the water has come all the way up to the bottom of the dunes and I've eroded them from the bottom, and so it's eroding the dune front, the dune face a little bit, which is, if you go back to page 26, that kind of shows you, right, the environments in this kind of pseudo washover deposits. This is the regular environment, it never makes it to the dunes. But if you get a storm coming through, it might make it to the bottom of the dunes and start eroding away some of the dunes. And so that's kind of what's happening in this past storm, whenever that was, because it's a little while ago, because those are some pretty fresh erosion surfaces there. But then also I think what it did is when it came back off and it cleaned out the beach. So normally there's sand right there. There's sand over that mud. And that other mud is not exposed. But as the water retreated from this last storm, it cleaned out the beach a little bit and took some sand offshore. Now the next big storm is going to push that sand back up on here again. But currently, right now, where we're standing, we move some sand offshore. Sometimes that'll get preserved, sometimes it's one. But again, you know that those processes occur, so in your subsurface investigations, if you see kind of a weird little isolated offshore sandbar, that's how they form. So that's the process that can move sand from onshore, comes in, grabs a little bit of sand for the dunes, grabs sands off the beach, and then takes it back out through there. And then if nothing really happens that more, the wave action will kind of move around, make a nice little offshore bar, but then sometimes it can get preserved, or sometimes the next hurricane comes through and takes it totally away. So, settling pond and bringing beach sand into this back barrier world. I mean, we made the back barrier world, but it's still the same natural processes that are occurring. How much of that is going to occur is variable and very hard to predict on that scale. We know it happens. We know the processes, we know you should be able to expect it. Your results will vary depending upon your local conditions. And so you start off with the model, you start off with the processes, and then you need to see how to modify that model and how to apply those processes for your local information. So anyone who just automatically takes a paper, smacks their model onto their data, that's you know it's wrong.
Certainly, but I mean, in terms of, you know, if you're looking at, like, for instance, subsurface and trying to interpret an environment, you know, it's always petrographically, you know, where do you start? You know?
Then, yeah, well, again, just looking at the grain sizes variation, start off with, you know, what is my dominant environment, and then see where those exceptions are to the rule. But then also you have to, particularly for a sedimentologist, this is where the stratigraphy portion comes in. You want to know what's happening underneath it, you want to know what's happening above it to make sure that your interpretation of any of those little sand lenses in there are reasonable. So if you have you know, coursing and thickening upwards, shore face environment above it, you know, below it, and then it goes into mud. Well, what happened there? Did sea level rise and so now I'm offshore, or did my shoreline prograde out over and now I'm in the back barrier world? You know, so you want to know which world you are in, because you can identify I'm in one or the other. And so if I'm in one or the other and I find some little isolated sands in there, now I'm talking about washover deposits, or I'm talking about little tempestites or storm surges in some isolated little sands. They're both isolated little sands, but again, you might be able to, knowing what environment you're in, whether you're in a washover back barrier world or an offshore bar world, that gives you a little bit more clues as to the extent and the three-dimensional geometry of that sand and where to go away from your data points. The sand might look exactly the same. The mud will look similar on a log, but some other clues will help you in that stacking pattern, will definitely help you with trying to understand what world I'm actually living in, so that I can figure out what bucket I need to be in and think about just that bucket. We'll drive over a couple more of these things through there that are now exposed. That might be kind of natural-ish. So again, I can't claim anything because, man, we've done so much stuff in this stretch of coast that I don't know exactly what's happening there. We've done it since the 1920s, you know, so for 100 years. Whew. I mean, that stuff just stinks, doesn't it?
It has. It really gets on you.
It's kind of staying in nice braided sleeve. Oh, Emma. Nice.
So it's like in real.
Right. We're going to drive past this outcrop just a little ways. We'll stop up.
Oh, okay. It's a tire truck.
Oh! Yeah!
Yeah! No, he's dead.